Leo Maxwell knew the language of worn-out things. He coaxed life from sputtering engines with a patience born of necessity, his hands, calloused and ingrained with grease, moving with an almost tender familiarity over tired metal. His own life felt a bit like that these days, running on fumes, patched up but stubbornly refusing to quit. Each morning, the weak dawn light would find him already awake, the scent of cheap coffee, a thin veil against the ever-present worry that gnawed at the edges of his peace. His small apartment, above a perpetually closed laundromat, was tidy, thanks to his efforts and the surprisingly meticulous habits of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. She was the sun in his often overcast world, her bright laughter the fuel that kept him going when his own reserves ran dry. His work as a part-time mechanic at Grease Monkey Garage barely kept their heads above water. The owner, old Sal, was a decent man, but business had been slow. And Leo's hours were as unpredictable as the sputtering exhaust of some of an ancient pickup he'd wrestled with the day before. He supplemented their income with odd jobs, fixing anything with moving parts for neighbors who paid in cash, sometimes produce, and always with a gratitude that warmed him more than the meager earnings. He often thought about his wife, Sarah. Her absence was a constant ache, a hollow space in their small family, most keenly felt when Lily asked questions he struggled to answer, or when he found himself staring at the empty side of the bed, the silence of the room pressing in. He'd promised Sarah he'd give Lily the world, but most days he felt he was barely providing the essentials. One particularly grueling Tuesday, after a frustrating morning spent trying to diagnose an electrical gremlin in a vintage sedan that paid next to nothing, Leo was driving his own battered truck home. He was tired, the familiar ache in his lower back a dull throb, and his mind was already on the macaroni and cheese he'd promised Lily for dinner. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain, and the wind whipped loose leaves across the cracked asphalt of the suburban road. He just wanted to get home, to hear Lily's chatter about school, to lose himself for a few hours in the simple routines of fatherhood. That was when he saw it. A sleek, dark sedan pulled awkwardly onto the gravel shoulder, hazard lights blinking in a frantic, almost panicked rhythm. Beside it stood a woman, looking at a decidedly flat rear tire with an expression of utter helplessness. Leo's first instinct, born of fatigue and a deep-seated desire to avoid any further complications in his already complicated day, was to drive on. He had his own problems. He wasn't a knight in shining armor, just a man trying to make ends meet. He even felt a fleeting, cynical thought, probably some rich lady who's never had to deal with a real problem in her life. But then he saw her shoulders slump, a gesture of defeat that resonated with something deep inside him. He remembered Sarah, stranded once with a flat tire, her frustration turning to tears until he'd arrived. He sighed, a puff of air that seemed to carry away some of his weariness. Kindness, his mother used to say, cost nothing but could be worth everything. He flicked on his indicator and pulled over behind the sedan. The woman looked up as he approached, her eyes wide and a little wary. She was dressed impeccably, in a tailored pantsuit that looked like it cost more than his monthly rent, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist that was now slightly disheveled by the wind. There was an air of refined composure about her, even in her current predicament, but also a vulnerability that softened her features. "Trouble?" Leo asked, his voice calm and practical. It was a stupid question, given the circumstances, but it broke the ice. She gestured helplessly at the flat tire. "Yes, rather a lot of it. I'm afraid. I seem to have hit something a little way back. I have a spare, I think, but I wouldn't know where to begin, and my phone has decided to die at the most inconvenient moment possible." Her voice was cultured, with a faint, unplaceable accent. Leo nodded, already assessing the situation. "Happens to the best of us. Do you have a jack and a lug wrench in the trunk?" I believe so," she said, sounding uncertain. "The rental company assured me it was all there." "All right then," Leo said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Let's take a look. I'm Leo, by the way." "Clara," she replied, a flicker of relief in her eyes. "Clara Ashworth, and I'm incredibly grateful you stopped, Leo." Leo got to work with practiced efficiency. The trunk of the expensive rental yielded a pristine spare, a compact jack, and a surprisingly flimsy lug wrench. He made a mental note that rental companies often skimped on the quality of their emergency tools. As he loosened the lug nuts, which were predictably over-tightened, Clara watched him, her initial wariness replaced by a quiet curiosity. She stood a little awkwardly, clutching her handbag, the wind whipping strands of hair around her face. "You make that look remarkably easy," she commented, her voice carrying over the sigh of the wind. Leo grunted with effort as a particularly stubborn nut finally gave way. "Done it a few times," he said without looking up. "Part of the job sometimes. Well, my part-time job anyway." He didn't elaborate, not wanting to sound like he was fishing for sympathy. He was just changing a tire. "You're a mechanic?" she asked, a note of interest in her tone. "Among other things," Leo replied, positioning the jack. "Whatever pays the bills. Or tries to." He pumped the jack, the car rising smoothly. He worked in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds, the clink of metal, the rhythmic creak of the jack, and the mournful whistle of the wind through the skeletal branches of nearby trees. He could feel her gaze on him, observant and thoughtful. It wasn't an uncomfortable scrutiny, more like she was genuinely trying to understand something. Once the flat tire was off and the spare was being fitted, Clara spoke again. "I was on my way to a literary festival in Northwood. I'm a writer." Leo paused, tightening a lug nut. "A writer, huh? Anything I might have heard of?" He didn't read much these days, beyond Lily's schoolbooks and the occasional automotive manual, but he tried to sound polite. Clara hesitated for a moment. "Perhaps. My last book was called The Obsidian Mirror." "It did?" "Surprisingly well." Leo frowned slightly, trying to place the title. It sounded vaguely familiar, like something he might have seen on a bestseller display at the supermarket checkout. "Can't say I have," he admitted. "Not much time for reading lately. Got a little girl, Lily?" 7. She keeps me busy." A smile touched his lips at the thought of his daughter. "A daughter," Clara said softly, her voice losing some of its formal edge. "That's wonderful. Is it just you and Lily?" Leo's smile faded a little. "Yeah. Her mum passed away a few years back." He didn't usually share this with strangers, but there was something about Clara's quiet attentiveness that made it feel natural. He finished tightening the last lug nut with a firm tug. "There you go. Good as new. Or, well, good enough to get you to a proper tire shop." He lowered the car and began stowing the flat tire and tools back in the trunk. Clara opened her handbag. "Leo, I can't thank you enough. Please let me compensate you for your time and trouble." She started to pull out her wallet, her fingers fumbling slightly. Leo held up a hand, wiping grease from it onto an old rag he kept in his truck. "No, ma'am. No need for that. Just glad I could help. Someone helped my wife once when she was in a similar spot. Just paying it forward, I guess." Clara looked taken aback. "But you've spent nearly an hour here, in this awful wind." "It's all right," Leo insisted gently. "Really, just be careful on that spare. They're not meant for long distances or high speeds." He gave her a genuine smile then, the kind that reached his tired eyes. "Drive safe, Clara." He turned to go back to his truck, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. It wasn't much, changing a tire, but it felt good to have eased someone else's burden, even for a little while. "Wait!" Clara called out, her voice urgent. Leo stopped and turned. She had a thoughtful, almost intense expression on her face. "Leo, you said you're a part-time mechanic. That implies you have other parts to your time. He shrugged. Looking for more parts, mostly. More hours. More anything, to be honest. My publisher is hosting a small reception tonight. After my talk at the festival, she said, a new idea clearly forming in her mind. It's nothing fancy, just some cheese and wine. But perhaps you and Lily would like to come? As my guests? It's the least I can do. And maybe, she added, a touch of intrigue in her voice, we could talk more about, well, about things. Leo was surprised. A fancy reception? With a best-selling author? It was a world away from macaroni and cheese and overdue bills. He thought of Lily, her eyes lighting up at the idea of an adventure. But then reality intruded. His work clothes were stained. He didn't own a suit, and Lily would need a babysitter, or he'd feel awkward bringing her. That's very kind of you, Clara, he said slowly, but I don't think we're not really dressed for that sort of thing. And Lily, she's... Clara smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her face. Nonsense. It's very informal. And please bring Lily. I adore children. It would be my pleasure. Think of it as a thank you. No strings attached. She scribbled an address on the back of a business card. My talk is at 7. Reception afterwards, around 8:30. Just ask for Clara Ashworth. Before Leo could formulate another protest, she pressed the card into his hand. Please consider it, Leo. I'd really like that. Her gaze was sincere, and for the first time that day, Leo felt a flicker of something other than weariness. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe just the warmth of unexpected human connection. Okay, he found himself saying, surprising himself. Okay, Clara. We'll try to make it. Wonderful, she exclaimed, her relief palpable. I'll look forward to it. She got into her car, started the engine, and with a final grateful wave, pulled slowly back onto the road. Leo watched her go, the sleek sedan disappearing around a bend. He looked at the business card in his hand. Clara Ashworth, author. Underneath, in elegant script, was the name of a prominent publishing house. He shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. What a strange encounter. He got back into his truck, the engine rumbling to life like a contented old beast. The threatened rain hadn't materialized, and as he drove, he found himself thinking not about his bills or the leaky faucet he needed to fix, but about a woman named Clara and an unexpected invitation. Lily would be thrilled. And for some reason, the thought made him feel lighter than he had in a long time. Back at their small apartment, Lily was, as predicted, ecstatic at the news of an evening out. A party, Daddy? With a real live author? Did she write fairy tales? Leo chuckled, ruffling her hair. I don't think so, sweet pea. More like grown-up stories. But she seemed very nice. He managed to find a clean, if slightly faded, collared shirt for himself, and Lily insisted on wearing her sparkly blue dress, the one usually reserved for birthday parties. He felt a pang of inadequacy looking at their modest attire, but Clara's insistence that it was informal echoed in his mind. The literary festival was held in an old, beautifully restored theatre in Northwood, a town considerably more affluent than their own neighborhood. The reception was in a grand, wood-paneled room adjoining the main hall. Leo, holding Lily's hand tightly, felt a wave of self-consciousness as they stepped inside. The room buzzed with conversation, a sea of well-dressed people holding wine glasses and nibbling on canapés. He spotted Clara almost immediately. She was surrounded by a small group of admirers, but she looked up as if sensing their arrival, her face lighting up with a welcoming smile. Excusing herself, she made her way towards them. Leo, Lily, I'm so glad you came, Clara said warmly, her eyes genuinely pleased. She crouched down to Lily's level. And you must be Lily. That is a beautiful dress. You look like a princess. Lily, usually shy with strangers, beamed. "Thank you, Daddy. Fixed your car." Clara laughed, a melodious sound. "He certainly did. He was my knight in shining armor today." She straightened up, her gaze meeting Leo's. "Come, let me get you both something to drink. And Lily, I think there are some rather delicious-looking miniature cupcakes over there." The evening passed in a pleasant blur for Leo. Clara was a gracious hostess, ensuring they felt comfortable, introducing them to a few people: her editor, a kindly older woman named Eleanor, and her publicist, a briskly efficient young man named Mark, who gave Leo a polite but somewhat appraising look. Leo mostly listened, nursing a glass of orange juice, while Lily, after devouring 2 cupcakes, sat quietly beside him, drawing in a small notebook Clara had magically produced from her bag. He watched Clara interact with her colleagues and fans. She was articulate, witty, and engaging, clearly respected and admired. He saw glimpses of the woman from the roadside. The vulnerability was still there beneath the confident exterior, especially when she caught his eye and offered a small, almost conspiratorial smile. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Clara found a quiet corner with Leo. Lily had finally succumbed to exhaustion, her head resting on Leo's lap, her breathing soft and even. "She's beautiful, Leo," Clara said softly, looking at Lily. "She's my world," Leo replied, his voice thick with affection. He stroked Lily's hair. "Thank you for inviting us, Clara. This was different, in a good way." "I'm glad," Clara said. "Leo, what you did today, it was more than just changing a tire. It was an act of simple, unhesitating kindness. It's rarer than you think." She paused, then continued. "I've been struggling with my next book, utterly blocked. But today, watching you, hearing a little about your life, it sparked something, an idea." Leo looked at her, surprised. "An idea? About what?" "About people like you," she said, her gaze earnest. "About quiet strength, resilience, about finding grace in the everyday struggles. I know it sounds presumptuous, but your story, or rather, the essence of it resonated with me deeply." Leo felt a flush creep up his neck. "My story? There's not much to it, Clara. Just trying to get by." "That's where you're wrong," she said gently. "There's everything to it." She leaned forward slightly. "This is going to sound forward, but I have another reason for wanting to talk to you. Besides the book idea, which I'd love to discuss more if you're open to it. Anonymously, of course." Leo waited, a sense of anticipation building. "I run a foundation," Clara continued, her voice now more businesslike, yet still warm. "It's called the Open Door Foundation. We work with underprivileged children, providing educational resources, mentorship, safe spaces. It's funded primarily by my book royalties." Leo listened, intrigued. He'd always had a soft spot for kids, especially those who didn't have it easy. "We're looking to expand our practical skills program," Clara explained. "Things like basic mechanics, woodworking, teaching kids tangible skills that can build confidence and open up future possibilities. We need someone to help coordinate it, someone with hands-on experience, someone who understands what it's like to struggle and persevere, someone like you, Leo." Leo stared at her, speechless. Him, running a program for a foundation? It seemed utterly beyond the realm of possibility. "Me?" he finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Clara, I just fix cars. I barely finished high school." "You connect with people, Leo," Clara said firmly. "You have integrity. You have a daughter you clearly adore and provide for under difficult circumstances. You showed immense patience and kindness to a complete stranger today. Those are qualities far more valuable than a string of degrees. This wouldn't be a volunteer position. It would be a proper job. with a decent salary, benefits. Leo's mind reeled. A steady job? Benefits? Doing something meaningful? It was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. But the fear of inadequacy was a powerful countercurrent. I wouldn't even know where to start, he confessed, his earlier weariness returning, mingled with a terrifying hope. You wouldn't be alone, Clara reassured him. We have a great team, and I'd be there. We could build it together. Think about it, Leo. No pressure, but I see something in you, a capability you might not see in yourself. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. You saved me today, in more ways than one. Perhaps this is a way for the universe to return the favor. The drive home was quiet, Lily sleeping soundly in her car seat. Leo's mind, however, was a whirlwind. Clara's offer, her belief in him, the prospect of a future so different from the one he'd resigned himself to, it was almost too much to comprehend. He glanced at the business card still on his dashboard. No longer just a memento of a strange encounter, but a symbol of a potential turning point. He felt a confusing mix of excitement and trepidation. Could he really do it? Was he capable of stepping into such a different world? The image of Lily's trusting face, her innocent belief in her daddy, flashed in his mind. For her, he had to at least consider it. He had to try. The next few days were a strange mixture of routine and internal turmoil for Leo. He continued his shifts at Grease Monkey Garage, the familiar scent of oil and old metal, a grounding presence amidst the chaos in his head. He fixed a carburetor, replaced a faulty alternator, and changed countless tires, each mundane task a counterpoint to the extraordinary possibility Clara Ashworth had presented. He found himself replaying their conversations, her earnest belief in him, the quiet confidence in her eyes. He hadn't told Sal about the offer yet, nor any of his regular customers. It felt too fragile, too unreal, to speak aloud. What if he was just a momentary inspiration for her, a character sketch for her next novel, and the job offer was a whim she'd soon regret? He looked up the Open Door Foundation online, using the slow computer at the local library, while Lily browsed picture books. The website was professional, filled with photos of smiling children engaged in various activities, art classes, reading groups, computer workshops. There were testimonials from parents, from teachers, from the children themselves. It was real. It was making a difference. And Clara's name was prominent, not just as a founder, but as someone actively involved. He read about her own difficult childhood, briefly mentioned in her biography, and understood a little more about her passion for this work. The more he learned, the more the idea of being part of it took root, a tiny seed of hope pushing through the hard soil of his doubts. His biggest obstacle, he realized, wasn't his lack of qualifications, but his own ingrained fear of failure. He'd failed Sarah, in a way, by not being able to provide the life he'd dreamed for them before she got sick. He was terrified of failing Lily, of letting her down if he took this leap and fell flat on his face. The familiar grind, the struggle, was at least predictable. This new path was shrouded in uncertainty. He talked to Lily about it, in simple terms. That nice lady, Clara, she has a special school for kids, and she asked if I wanted to help teach them how to fix things, like bikes and toys. Lily's eyes widened. Like you fix my scooter, Daddy? And my dollhouse? Something like that, sweet pea. Wow, would you be a teacher? That's so cool. Her unbridled enthusiasm was a balm to his anxious soul. If Lily believed he could do it, maybe he could too. A week after their meeting, Leo called the number on Clara's card. Her assistant answered, polite and efficient, and put him through almost immediately. Leo, I was hoping you'd call. Clara's voice came through the line, warm and welcoming. Have you given my proposal some thought? I have, Clara, Leo said, his heart thumping. He took a deep breath. I'd like to learn more, if the offer still stands. It absolutely still stands, Leo, she replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. I'm thrilled. Could you come by the foundation office? Perhaps tomorrow afternoon? We can talk properly. I can introduce you to some of the team, show you around. Tomorrow would be good. Leo agreed, a surge of nervous energy coursing through him. This was it. He was taking the first step. The Open Door Foundation was housed in a converted warehouse in a revitalized industrial district. A vibrant splash of color and life amidst old brick buildings. Inside, it was bright and airy, filled with children's artwork, comfortable-looking furniture, and the cheerful hum of activity. It didn't feel like an office. It felt like a community. Clara greeted him at the door, dressed more casually, this time in jeans and a sweater, looking less like a best-selling author and more like a dedicated youth worker. "Welcome, Leo," she said, her smile genuine. "Come on in." She gave him a tour, introducing him to Maria, the calm and capable program director, and to David, a young, energetic outreach coordinator. They were both welcoming, treating him not as an outsider, but as a potential colleague. He saw the workshop space Clara had envisioned for the practical skills program, a large, well-lit room, currently empty but full of potential. He could already imagine benches, tools, and the eager faces of children learning to create and repair. "It needs a lot of work," Clara admitted, gesturing around the empty space. "But I have a vision for it, and I think you're the perfect person to help bring that vision to life." They talked for over an hour in Clara's small, cluttered office, filled with books and children's drawings taped to the walls. She laid out the responsibilities, the proposed salary, which was more than he dared to hope for, and the support system in place. She answered his hesitant questions with patience and clarity, addressing his concerns about his lack of formal experience by emphasizing his practical skills, his empathy, and his lived experience. "Leo," she said, her gaze direct and kind, "many people can teach from a manual, but not everyone can teach from the heart. Not everyone understands what it means to give a child not just a skill, but a sense of worth, a belief in their own capability. I believe you can do that." The honesty in her voice chipped away at his remaining doubts. He thought of Lily, of the constant financial anxiety, of the feeling of being stuck. This was a chance, a real chance, to build something better, not just for himself and Lily, but for other children too. "Okay," he said, the word feeling momentous. "Okay, Clara, I'll do it. I'd like to try." Clara's face broke into a wide, radiant smile. "That's wonderful news, Leo. Absolutely wonderful. I knew you were the right person." She stood up and extended her hand. He took it, her grip firm and reassuring. It felt like more than just a handshake. It felt like the sealing of a pact, the beginning of a new chapter. The transition wasn't entirely seamless. Leo had to work out his notice with Sal, who was surprisingly supportive, if a little wistful at losing his most reliable mechanic. "Go for it, son," Sal had said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Opportunity like that doesn't knock twice. You've got a good heart, Leo. Those kids will be lucky to have you." There was paperwork, orientations, meeting more of the foundation staff. He felt like a fish out of water at times, navigating office dynamics and program planning meetings, a world away from engine grease and tire irons. There were moments of acute self-doubt. He'd sit in meetings, listening to jargon and acronyms he didn't understand, feeling like an imposter. Who was he, a part-time mechanic, to be sitting at this table, making decisions that would affect children's lives? But Clara was a constant source of encouragement. She never babied him, but she made sure he had the information he needed, patiently explaining processes, valuing his input, especially his practical insights. She'd often seek his opinion. "Leo, what do you think? From a hands-on perspective, would this approach work with the kids?" Her faith in him was a steady anchor. His first major task was to equip the workshop. Clara gave him a budget and carte blanche to source tools and materials. This was familiar territory. He spent days scouring second-hand shops, online marketplaces, and even Sal's overflowing back room, finding sturdy workbenches, good quality tools that could withstand enthusiastic but inexperienced handling, and materials for initial projects. He painted the workshop himself, choosing bright, cheerful colors, and installed pegboards for the tools, arranging them with a mechanic's precision. Lily often helped on weekends, her small hands meticulously sorting screws and painting scraps of wood, her presence a constant reminder of why he was doing this. The day the first group of children arrived for the new practical skills program, Leo was a bundle of nerves. He'd planned a simple project, building birdhouses. He had pre-cut some of the wood, but he wanted them to do as much of the assembly and finishing as possible. There were 12 of them, ranging in age from 10 to 14, a mix of boisterous energy and shy apprehension. Clara was there for support, standing quietly at the back, but she let Leo take the lead. He fumbled with his notes, his voice a little shaky as he introduced himself. "Hi everyone, I'm Leo, and welcome to the workshop. Today, we're going to build something cool." The initial response was muted. Some kids looked skeptical, others just bored. But as Leo started demonstrating how to sand the wood, how to carefully hammer a nail, his passion for working with his hands began to shine through. He moved around the room, offering guidance, correcting a grip here, praising a neat join there. He remembered his own childhood, the satisfaction of making something, of fixing something broken. He tried to convey that to them. There was a boy named Marcus, quiet and withdrawn, who seemed afraid to even pick up a hammer. Leo sat with him, not pushing, just talking softly about how it felt to create something. He showed Marcus how to hold the hammer, how to tap the nail gently at first. Slowly, Marcus began to work, his brow furrowed in concentration. When he finally hammered his first nail straight, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Leo felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. By the end of an hour and a half, the workshop was a chaotic but happy mess of wood shavings, paint splatters, and 12 slightly lopsided but proudly constructed birdhouses. The children were chattering, comparing their creations, their earlier shyness gone. Marcus, his birdhouse painted a vibrant blue, actually sought Leo out. "Thanks, Mr. Leo," he mumbled, looking at the floor. This was okay. For Marcus, Leo knew okay was high praise. "You did a great job, Marcus," Leo said, smiling. "That's a fine birdhouse." As the children left, buzzing with excitement, Clara approached Leo, her eyes shining. "You were amazing, Leo," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "They loved it. And they loved you." Leo felt a blush creep up his neck. "It was fun," he admitted, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Hard work, but fun." He looked around the workshop, at the lingering scent of sawdust and paint, at the colorful birdhouses waiting to dry. For the first time in a long time, he felt a profound sense of purpose, a feeling that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Clara's next book, tentatively titled The Roadside Mechanic and Other Small Mercies, was slowly taking shape. She sometimes read passages to Leo, not for his literary critique, she'd joke, but for authenticity. The character inspired by him, a man named Arthur, was quiet, kind, and possessed an innate wisdom that came from a life of hard knocks and quiet dignity. Leo felt a strange sense of unreality hearing his own experiences, his own way of speaking, echoed in her prose. Yet he also felt seen, understood in a way he hadn't expected. "Arthur isn't you, Leo," Clara explained one afternoon as they shared coffee in her office after a particularly successful workshop session. "But he carries your spirit, the spirit of quiet decency, of everyday heroism. It's a story about how one small act of kindness can ripple outwards, changing lives in unexpected ways." "Sounds like our story a bit," Leo said. smiling. Clara smiled back. A little, yes. Life imitating art. Or perhaps art trying to catch up with life. Their friendship deepened, forged in shared purpose and mutual respect. They worked well together, Clara's visionary ideas tempered by Leo's practical grounding. She pushed him to dream bigger for the program, while he kept her focused on what was achievable and sustainable. Lily adored Clara, who always had time for a chat, a story, or a shared drawing session. Sometimes, the three of them would have dinner together, simple meals at Leo's apartment, filled with laughter and easy conversation. It felt good. It felt like a family, albeit an unconventional one. However, not everyone in Clara's orbit was as accepting of Leo. Richard Sterling, a prominent board member of the foundation and an old family friend of Clara's, was openly skeptical of Leo's appointment. Sterling was a wealthy investment banker, a man who moved in powerful circles and valued pedigree and connections above all else. He'd made his disapproval known in subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways. At board meetings, he would direct pointed questions at Leo about budgets and outcome metrics, his tone condescending, his eyes holding a cool dismissal. "Mr. Maxwell," Sterling had drawled at one meeting, after Leo presented a proposal for a go-kart building project. "While your enthusiasm is noted, one must question the fiscal prudence of such an undertaking. These are disadvantaged children, not aspiring race car drivers. Perhaps resources would be better allocated to more traditional educational pursuits." Leo had felt a flare of anger, but he kept his voice even. "Mr. Sterling, these kids learn physics, engineering, teamwork, and problem-solving building those go-karts. They also learn that they can create something amazing from scratch. That's a lesson more valuable than anything they'd get from a textbook alone. And it's fun. Joy is a powerful motivator for learning, especially for kids who don't have much of it in their lives." Clara had backed Leo up immediately and firmly, but Sterling's disdain was a persistent irritant, a reminder of the world he didn't belong to, a world that judged him by his past rather than his present. It fueled Leo's lingering insecurities, making him work even harder to prove himself, to ensure the program was an undeniable success. One crisp autumn afternoon, disaster struck. A small fire broke out in a storage closet adjacent to the workshop, caused by faulty wiring in the old building, something that had been on the long list of future upgrades. Thankfully, it was after hours, and no children were present. Leo and Clara had been working late, finalizing plans for a community open house to showcase the children's projects. The smell of smoke alerted them. Thick, acrid smoke was already billowing from under the closet door. "Call 911, Leo yelled, grabbing a fire extinguisher, his mind racing. The workshop, the tools, the kids' projects, carefully stored for the open house. While Clara made the call, her voice remarkably calm under pressure, Leo fought his way into the closet. The flames were small, but growing fast, licking at shelves, filled with flammable art supplies. He discharged the extinguisher, the chemical foam temporarily beating back the fire. But it was clear this was beyond one extinguisher. He could hear the distant wail of sirens. "We need to get out," Clara urged, pulling at his arm. "The projects," Leo gasped, coughing as smoke filled his lungs. "The go-karts, the birdhouses, they're in the main workshop. We have to save what we can." The open house was in 2 days. Those projects represented hours of work, pride, and achievement for the children. He couldn't let them be destroyed. "Leo, it's too dangerous," Clara pleaded, her face pale with fear. But Leo was already moving, driven by a fierce protectiveness. He kicked open the main workshop doors, the smoke following him in. He started grabbing the nearest items, a half-finished go-kart, a box of intricately painted model cars. Clara, after a moment's hesitation, joined him, her earlier fear replaced by a determined resolve. Together, they worked in the thickening smoke, coughing and eyes streaming, moving as much as they could out into the hallway, away from the immediate danger. The heat was intensifying. Suddenly, a section of the ceiling near the storage closet groaned ominously. "Leo now! We have to go!" Clara screamed, yanking him towards the exit just as a piece of burning debris crashed down where he'd been standing moments before. They stumbled out into the fresh air, gasping and soot-covered, just as the first fire engine pulled up. Firefighters rushed into the building. Leo and Clara could only watch, helpless, as smoke poured from the windows. Leo's heart sank. Despite their efforts, he knew much would be lost. He felt Clara's hand find his, her grip tight. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He nodded, still coughing. "Yeah? You?" Shaken, but okay. She looked at the building, then at Leo. "You were incredibly brave, Leo, and incredibly reckless." "They worked so hard," Leo said, his voice rough with emotion and smoke. "Those kids, this was so important to them." He felt a wave of despair. The open house, the showcase of their achievements, it all seemed ruined. The fire was contained relatively quickly, confined mostly to the storage closet and a small section of the workshop ceiling, but the smoke and water damage was extensive throughout the workshop area. Many of the tools were damaged, materials ruined, and a significant number of the children's projects were either destroyed or badly smoke damaged. The air hung heavy with the smell of wet ash and disappointment. The following morning, Leo and Clara surveyed the damage. The bright, cheerful workshop was now a charred, damp, and depressing space. Leo felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Richard Sterling arrived, unannounced, his expression a mixture of concern and barely concealed, "I told you so." "A most unfortunate incident, Clara," Sterling said, his gaze sweeping over the ruined workshop before settling on Leo with cool disapproval. "Perhaps a sign that certain ambitious ventures are best left to more seasoned hands. This will set the foundation back considerably. The insurers will cover some, of course, but the disruption, the loss of momentum." He let the sentence hang. Leo felt a surge of anger. But before he could speak, Clara stepped forward, her chin high. "This is a setback, Richard, not a defeat." And Leo's quick actions, his bravery in saving what he could, likely prevented a much greater catastrophe. He put himself at risk for these children and their work. Sterling sniffed dismissively. "Bravery is admirable, Clara, but prudence and proper risk management are what sustain an organization. Perhaps this rustic approach to skill building has inherent dangers we overlooked." That was the last straw for Leo. "Rustic approach," he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Mr. Sterling, do you have any idea what these projects mean to these kids? For some of them, it's the first time anyone has told them they're good at something, the first time they've built something with their own hands and felt proud. This isn't just about go-karts and birdhouses. It's about building confidence, resilience, hope. And we will rebuild this. We will have that open house. Those kids deserve to show off what they've accomplished, fire or no fire." Sterling looked taken aback by Leo's passionate outburst. Clara placed a supportive hand on Leo's arm. "Leo is right, Richard. We are not canceling the open house. We will find a way." "And how do you propose to do that, Clara?" Sterling challenged. "With what resources? In what time frame? The place is a disaster." Clara looked at Leo, a question in her eyes. He met her gaze, a new determination hardening his resolve. The despair he'd felt earlier was burning away, replaced by a fierce will to succeed against the odds. This was his program. These were his kids, in a way. He wouldn't let them down. He wouldn't let Sterling's negativity win. "We'll clean it up," Leo said firmly. "We'll salvage what we can. We'll work day and night if we have to. And we'll ask for help. The community, they'll help." He thought of Sal, of the parents of the children, of the other staff at the foundation. Clara smiled, a spark of excitement igniting in her eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, we will." She turned to Sterling. "Thank you for your concern, Richard. We have work to do." Her tone brooked no further argument. Sterling, looking slightly deflated, gave a curt nod and departed. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity. News of the fire and Leo's determination to save the open house spread quickly. Clara put out a call for volunteers and donations on the foundation's social media. The response was overwhelming. Parents of the children in the program arrived with mops, buckets, and offers of help. Local businesses donated cleaning supplies, paint, and fresh lumber. Sal closed his garage for a day and brought his tools and 2 of his other part-time mechanics. Even some of the older kids from the program showed up, eager to help restore their space. Leo was at the center of it all, organizing, directing, his exhaustion forgotten in the adrenaline-fueled effort. He salvaged tools, cleaned and repaired what he could, and supervised the cleanup. Clara was right beside him. Her designer clothes swapped for old jeans and a sweatshirt, her hands as dirty as everyone else's. They worked side by side, a team, fueled by coffee, sandwiches provided by a local deli, and an incredible sense of shared purpose. The workshop, which had looked so devastated, slowly began to re-emerge, cleaner, brighter, a testament to the community's spirit. Damaged projects were carefully repaired where possible, and for those beyond saving, new, simpler projects were quickly devised and completed with a collective energy that was inspiring. On the afternoon of the open house, the workshop, while still bearing a few faint scars of the fire, was vibrant and bustling. The air smelled of fresh paint and sawdust, mingled with the aroma of cookies baked by parent volunteers. The children's projects, repaired, repainted, or newly created, were proudly displayed. And the children themselves were beaming, their faces shining with pride as they showed their work to family, friends, and community members. Leo stood near the entrance, watching the scene, a deep sense of satisfaction washing over him. He was bone-tired, aching in every muscle, but his heart was full. Lily clung to his hand, her eyes wide with admiration for her father. Clara came to stand beside him, a soft smile on her face. "We did it, Leo," she said quietly. "No, Clara," Leo corrected her gently. "You did it. The kids did it. The community did it. I just hammered a few nails." Clara laughed. "You did a lot more than that, Leo Maxwell. You showed everyone what resilience and determination look like. You inspired them." She paused, then added, "Richard Sterling even sent a rather large donation this morning, with a note. It just said, 'For the go-karts.'" Leo raised an eyebrow, surprised. A small smile touched his lips. Maybe even Sterling could learn a thing or two. Just then, Marcus, the quiet boy from the first birdhouse session, approached Leo, holding a slightly singed but still recognizable wooden car he had made. "Mr. Leo," he said, his voice clearer, more confident than before, "thanks for not giving up on our stuff." "Never, Marcus," Leo said, crouching down to the boy's level. "You guys are too important to give up on." He looked at the hopeful, determined faces around him, at the renewed workshop, at Clara, whose belief in him had started it all. This was more than a job. This was where he belonged. The open house was a resounding success, not just as a showcase of the children's work, but as a celebration of community spirit and resilience. The local newspaper ran a story about the fire and the incredible effort to save the event, with a picture of Leo, soot-streaked but smiling, alongside Clara. He became something of a local hero, though he brushed off the praise with his usual modesty. For Leo, the real reward was seeing the pride in the children's eyes, and the renewed sense of hope that filled the workshop. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new, more stable rhythm for Leo. The workshop was fully repaired and even improved, with better safety features and more equipment, thanks to the outpouring of support and Sterling's unexpected generosity. Leo's practical skills program flourished, becoming one of the Foundation's most popular and impactful initiatives. He found he had a natural talent for teaching, for connecting with kids who were often overlooked or misunderstood. He wasn't just fixing things anymore. He was helping to fix lives in small but meaningful ways. His relationship with Clara deepened into a comfortable and profound partnership. They were a team, in and out of the Foundation. Her book, The Roadside Mechanic and Other Small Mercies, was published to critical acclaim and commercial success. In the acknowledgements, she wrote, "To LM, whose quiet kindness on a dusty roadside reminded me of the extraordinary power of ordinary people. This book, and so much more, would not exist without you." Leo felt a lump in his throat when he read it. He was no longer just Leo Maxwell, struggling mechanic. He was LM, an inspiration, a catalyst for good. One sunny Saturday afternoon, a few months later, the Foundation hosted a spring fair in the park adjoining their building. Lily, now a confident 8-year-old and a regular assistant in the workshop, was proudly demonstrating a small solar-powered car she and Leo had built together. Leo watched her, his heart swelling with love and pride. He was no longer constantly worried about bills, no longer haunted by a sense of failure. He had a purpose, a community, and a future filled with possibilities. Clara joined him, handing him a cup of lemonade. She looked relaxed and happy, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. "She's quite the engineer, isn't she?" Clara remarked, nodding towards Lily. "She gets it from her dad," Leo said with a grin, then quickly added, "and her own brilliant mind, of course." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the joyful chaos of the fair, children laughing, music playing, the scent of popcorn in the air. It was a world away from the roadside where they had first met, a world transformed by a simple act of kindness. "You know," Clara said softly, her gaze thoughtful as she looked at him, "when my tire went flat that day, I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened. I was late, stressed, and completely stranded." She turned to him, her eyes full of warmth. "Turns out, it was the best thing." Leo smiled, his gaze meeting hers. "Funny how life works out sometimes, isn't it?" He thought of the long road he had traveled, the struggles, the loneliness. And he thought of this moment, this feeling of contentment and belonging. "Yeah," he agreed, his voice full of emotion. "Best flat tire I ever fixed." Clara slipped her hand into his, her fingers lacing with his naturally, comfortably. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, but a quiet affirmation of everything they had built together: friendship, partnership, and a shared hope for the future. Leo squeezed her hand, a sense of peace settling over him, as profound and reliable as the hum of a perfectly tuned engine. He was home.